Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. We are gathering once more to speak about Concord. I didn't think we had any videos left in us here, but this situation is so much more worse than anybody could have imagined, right? It already came down to how character design killed a video game. It was that simple, and it was one of the most magnificent flops we've ever witnessed in gaming history. No exaggeration. Well, it turns out the Concord situation is a million times worse, 400 million times worse than we could have ever imagined. When Colin first shared this information with the Last Stand staff and I saw this, I was like, oh my word, I could not believe what I was seeing. And then he shared this information over on the Sacred Symbols podcast, where good God Almighty has it gone viral. So of course, please check out Sacred Symbols. Colin's a good friend of mine, and we're here to talk about Concord once more, where it's obviously been a bumpy ride for the game. We already know that. The beta did horrible when it came to the player count. Then the full release was not good either. They shut down the game a week later. Now the director of Concord has left the studio. The status of Firewalk is in question right now. And after all of this, we learned that this game may have cost $400 million. And fun fact about all of this, included in that episode of Sacred Symbols, this does not include the purchasing price for Firewalk Studios. So that's another I assume, millions of dollars that PlayStation threw out for this game. And wait till you hear the rationale, the reasoning behind this decision making. It's unbelievable. And it's been a bit of a bumpy ride in general for PlayStation as of late. A lot of up and downs. You have Astrobot doing really well. You have this Concord situation. You also have the PS5 Pro situation, where a lot of people aren't happy with that price tag. But you know what? Why are people focused on the PS5 Pro when you can get yourself a nice PC? Am I right? You know what? Let's talk about a couple of PCs, shall we? As this generation progresses on, it's become more and more important for a lot of people to invest their money in hardware that they're going to get a lot of good performance out of, but for great value. Many people aren't ready to make that jump to PC, but I think Apex is making it really easy with some of their pre-built options here that give you great bang for your buck. And keep in mind, as we go along here, I got a great discount code for you. Plus, you can finance all of these PCs, so you can pay as you go along if that's what works for your financial situation. They have the Apex Bronze, Apex Streamer, and Apex Streamer Plus. I'm going to focus here on the Apex Streamer, which finds itself in the middle of the two when it comes to value, because I think a lot of stuff that's packed in here is pretty good, between its CPU being a Ryzen 7 5700X 8-core at 3.8 gigahertz per core. You also have 32 gigs of RAM, an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060, 1 terabyte SSD. Like, you got everything you need to get going in PC gaming. And when you keep in mind that if you go to the link in the description down below and use code Matty, you get 10% off, or up until September 30th, if you use the code We Love Our Partners, you'll get 20% off. So if you're looking for a great PC with even better value, head to the link down below, use the code We Love Our Partners, get 20% off, or use code Matty, get 10% off. You know, whatever amount of money you want to save, right? All right, so let's get into this budget here. You know, gaming budgets are weirdly hidden away unless you like dig into GDC archives, or of course there's a massive leak of sorts, which has helped us out a lot in this particular instance, because with Colin saying that it was $400 million to make Concord, with a thorough breakdown of how that money was spent, we can then compare it to budgets we have learned about PlayStation Studios games like The Last of Us Part 2, which cost $220 million. And I'm with a lot of people. I'm not a crazy fan of the story, but the gameplay, the motion capture, the graphics, the lighting, everything. That game is beautiful and fun to play. And so, yeah, if that game's cheaper than Concord, that's saying something. Horizon Forbidden West falls in the $212 million pocket, and that had around 300 employees. 5 years of development time. Then you had Spider-Man 2, which falls in the $300 million to $315 million bucket, and that makes sense. We're talking about Spider-Man, where the first one sold over 20 million copies. So yeah, PlayStation got a lot of money out of that, even with the split between Marvel or Disney and themselves. There was a lot of money to be made there. But you'll see all of these are quality games that had shorter development times and completely undercut the $400 million spent on Concord. And what's really interesting is, for those who don't know, Concord was being concepted and developed for 8 years in total. So it wasn't just 4 years of straight development, but think about it. This began in 2016. That kind of shows, because Guardians of the Galaxy era, really. So it makes a lot of sense where this character design came from. But what's more interesting is when Colin started to break down the timeline in this episode of Sacred Symbols, where he talks about how the game had hit alpha in Q1 2023, which means it had a little bit over a year to go through alpha, beta, and then boom, full release. Now, what's also interesting is that was at the first 200 million mark. So they hit that, which was probably the original set budget of the game. It was not going anywhere fast at all. And so they had to spend more money to get this thing out the door because they believed in it so much, which is the most fascinating part about this. Believe it or not, like compared to the price tag, I think the reasoning, the rationale behind this is what's most fascinating to me. I've seen plenty of companies in my day spend stupid amount of money that they will just blink away and not even think much about it because they have that much in the bank account. But wait till you see the reasoning. Anyway, they hit alpha Q1 2023, right? $200 million pretty much out there. Then they spend another $200 million to get it across the finish line by outsourcing the game. Now, outsourcing games is not uncommon at all, especially in AAA development. This is really what gets all of them over the hump. Like you have a core development team, and then you send this out to separate studios that kind of refine and finish a lot of the game. But the reasoning, like I've said, the reasoning is just incredible. It's incredible. So this was touted as the next Star Wars. Yeah, the next Star Wars. We'll talk about that. But also, shockingly, the future of PlayStation. Look, I think PlayStation, among all these platform holders, have made some pretty brain dead decisions. But to say that this is the future of PlayStation, do you not listen to your audience? I hate to be that guy, but do you not listen to your audience? Bloodborne remaster? I'm not saying that's going to make as much as a brand new AAA game for PlayStation, like a new IP. But do you not know what made you all so fantastic through the PS4 generation? It's right there in front of you with Astrobot. It's really cool, unique exclusives. And I look at something like Bloodborne, I'm like, it would have been cheaper to make this. It would have made way more, and you would have made your fans way happier. I don't get this mindset where the companies think they know much more than the consumer. Like, we're deciding what we like. You use that data. And when you see how much live service games are making, like some stats came out for Diablo 4 where it made a stupid amount of money. It's why live service isn't going anywhere anytime soon. You're still going to see PlayStation attempt live service, even though I don't think it's a well-advised move. But PlayStation's fans, I think, are a particular breed in that they like the third-person, over-the-shoulder, open-world games. And of course, Astrobot is a great 3D platformer, and you have JRPGs on PlayStation that really have a home there. Like, they're known for a lot of things, but live service shooters is certainly not one of them. And so to tout that, the absolute opposite of what you're known for as the future of PlayStation, is the very definition of a sunk cost fallacy. Like, they have spent so much on this, they just have to get out the door. And on one business angle, I get it, right? You've spent so much, you may as well get some ROI. But I think now PlayStation would look at when they hit that first 200 million mark, the game was in alpha, you just cancel it there. But what's funny is when they got to that point, they bought the studio after that. And this is why the rumors of Jim Ryan kind of getting pushed out of the team at PlayStation makes a lot more sense, because this was a move by him, but then Herman Holst was said to champion this. And that I also believe, because I look at how Horizon is treated now. And for those who don't know, Herman Holst was a co-founder of Guerrilla Games, the developers of the Horizon series. And you look at how much Horizon we're getting, which I think is a fun series. I really like Zero Dawn. I've played very little of Forbidden West, but when you're seeing how we're potentially getting a remaster, and we're hearing about a co-op game, and there's a Lego Horizon game, like there's so much Horizon going on. I don't know if I'm just like in the dark here on how much people love it, but I was very surprised to see how much it is. But then you realize the head of PlayStation was originally a co-founder of Guerrilla Games, so he may have their best interests at heart, to tell you the truth. So when I think he likes something, you can really feel that sway. So he championed this game, and we're seeing the outcome of it. And if that is true, that is a pretty big bruise to wear. Then the last leg of this is something extremely common in game development, and I'll talk about my own story with this here, is that apparently there was a level of toxic positivity around Concord. You really couldn't say anything negative about this game internally. You couldn't be critical of it to help improve it, that sort of thing. And as a game developer, I get this. I actually went through this whole process with our MVP, which is something that Colin also talks about with Concord here. I distinctly remember when we first started to share this thing around, this is my first time exposing something my team and I had worked on to other people. And in particular, someone who's writing the game, I'm learning as I go. I sent it around. Some people were pretty critical of my writing in the game, and some of it did come across extremely harsh, and I did get into my feelings a little bit over it. I felt a bit hurt about it, but what I realized after that process was done, after the emotions got out of the way, is I'm, number one, a way better writer now. I know what the player's looking for, and you can only learn so much by seeing rather than doing, and then getting very important critical feedback. But the other thing is, it would have been very easy for me to say, like, hey, be nice about this, and just not hear the hard truth about it, which is like, this scene could have been done way better, Matt. Way better. Here's why. And you have to take that into account. So when you get into a game development environment, it's very important to have a critical focus on your product. Be aware of its biggest weaknesses. When you remove that, you remove any ability to sell it to someone. And I think that's the toughest part for people to get over. I think there's a way to deliver criticism on a video game you are making without being an asshole. That's something I've talked about personally in the past, where I've had experiences where people were just straight up rude about things, and you still take the criticism into account. You wish they were a little bit nicer about it, but you still take the criticism into account. But yeah, like, you need that sort of critique internally before you start to spin it out to play testers in mass, because you have something that you're at least a little bit confident of and sure of, and has been tested to some degree. But I think that process I went through was so vital to my growth as a developer, my team's growth as a developer. And I look at something like this where, hey, you can't say anything really negative about this. And I believe it, because how does anyone look at some of the character designs in this game and go, yeah, like, I think we should make something that kind of inspires greatness a little bit more here, or a little less wacky and off the rails. And I get it. It's difficult, because the best thing you can do as a developer is make something that you truly believe in and that you would fight for. And so it does lead to some battles internally. That's kind of the nature of creating something, is understanding that everyone wants what's best for the product, and reaching a middle ground where critique can be done and you can get the best possible quality out of something. And when that's absent in AAA development, that's a scary thought. That's a scary thought, that their heads were so far up their own asses that they were like, this is the future of PlayStation, even though it's flopping around and flailing. It is the next Star Wars, which is a pretty bold claim. I know some people thought it was fitting given where Star Wars is now, but if you think about it, I would say objectively, in the scale and scope of Star Wars and how far reaching it is, that's bold. But when you look at what they were setting up with that, like, Amazon TV show, which I guess they're going forward with, the weekly cutscenes for the game, they were going in on this game on a level that I don't think any of us truly comprehended, despite what we had heard about the game. So yeah, Concord as a failure is way worse than you could have ever imagined, right? Because the estimated number for all of this was 100 million. That's what people were thinking, like, oh, it's 100 million, which was already a cratering loss, right? You 100 million, and you refunded all the copies of the game. So you made like nothing on this. Maybe $1 million is what Colin said. That's nothing. But to have that now scale up to potentially 400 million without even considering the studio purchase is one of the greatest blunders in video game history. So hopefully it's a lesson that all developers can take a look at and take something away from it, because it is going to be a costly lesson for PlayStation. And I've already started to see people use the term Concord tax, because you got to wonder, with such a cratering blow like that, how much PlayStation wants to get the money back there. It also depends how much they have in the account. We'll talk about all of that, I guess, another time, but that's the information here on Concord. Very fascinating development. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, so fire away. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.